up. Maybe you're new to condos in Florida or HOAs in Florida, or maybe you're an old hand on the board and you've got some difficult problems you're facing. We're here to help you. It's a community service program that we have been doing for 16 or 17 years now, and we hope that it helps you out and will provide you with the information you need. A couple things that we always say before we get started on the show is one that we welcome calls. It is a call-in show, and we do welcome your calls. 220-9788, 220-WSTU is the number in the studio. So we welcome any calls you may have. Couple things we need a name, but we don't need your name. So feel free to remain anonymous if you want to. But we do ask that you bear with us on the questions because we don't have your documents, so we can't give you 100% answer on any of your issues without seeing those documents because it can change our answer. But we will give you the best answer based on the statutes, based on the rules and regulations and common practices and other things that we can. And we'll do the best we can on that. But if you do need something where you're going to have to rely on it to go to court, suggest that you contact your attorney or Peter and sit down with him, let him look at your documents and give you a more detailed response that would be based on your documents. The other thing that we mentioned is that we do like to try to talk a little bit broader than your particular question because there are other listeners out there who may have a similar question, but not exactly the same question, but are afraid to call. And so we will kind of talk about some of the variances of some of the problems when that occurs. My name is Mark Breckville. I'm a CPA and I'm a community association manager and have been practicing in this area as a CPA for 25 years. So have got an opportunity to deal with some of these issues, but like all of us in this industry, nobody has all the answers. We have all the questions, but or at least we're starting to narrow down all the questions, but not all the answers. So we're here. I'm also a member of the Florida Institute of Certified Public Accountants Sierra Committee, which is their common interest realty associations dealing with condos and HOAs and some of those kind of things. My partner on the show is Peter Mullengarden. Peter's not here this morning, so at least not yet. He usually calls in, so he may be running a little late. But we'll go ahead and take some questions anyway. And if it's something that I can't give you the answer to, certainly we'll get Peter to address it when he gets back after the holidays. So we're going to start out with our first question. Connie, go ahead.
Thank you. My question is regarding the minutes of a meeting. In our November meeting, we had a motion. It was a roll call vote. It was passed unanimously. Well, not two people didn't. And when I typed out the minutes and gave them to the president, he said he wanted to make some changes. Can he make any changes to the spoken word? It was recorded on a recorder, and then it was transcribed. And now he wants to make some changes.
Well, the answer to that is that yes, he does not have to use the exact words that were spoken. He's minutes are, and this is confusing sometimes for people, that minutes are not many times, many associations, the minutes are too detailed. They don't need to have that much detail in it. Basically, they need to document any motion that was made, who made the second, and in general needs to document what the vote was. But if the minutes are such that some of the information that was provided is not necessary to the motion, or doesn't impact the motion, it doesn't have to be verbatim all of the information. Now, the motion has to be what was made, but the verbiage around it, the discussions, any of those kind of things, um, regardless of the fact that there was, that it was recorded, doesn't have to be verbatim what was said. But again, it can't necessarily change. And if there's a question on that, Connie, the board has the right to decide whether or not those minutes are sufficient. So, if typically what happens is that the secretary would draft the minutes, would provide them. Doesn't necessarily have to provide them to the president to review before the meeting, but the secretary would normally draft the minutes. That would go to the meeting. Usually, it's circulated to all the board members ahead of time as a draft of the minutes, and then at that point, the next meeting, those minutes are voted on, and at that point in time, if a board member had a question about the minutes and whether or not it was, whether it was clear or whether it reflected what was done, then they can make a motion at that board meeting to modify the minutes. And
okay, let me just stop you
Okay.
there. This is the way it goes in our community.
Okay.
The minutes are typed. They're not given to the board member. They're given to the president. He decides what he wants in the minutes and what he doesn't want. At every board meeting, the month before his board meeting, minutes are never read. They're always, well, if you weren't here, then, you should be here to hear what's going on. The question that was posed at that board meeting was salary.
Well, let me ask you this first, though. At
Yeah.
those board meetings, are the previous minutes approved? Are they voted on?
The only, they're mailed to the board members on the Friday before the Tuesday.
Right.
And when you go to the meeting, the first thing is approval of the minutes, and then it's waived that we shouldn't read the minutes.
Okay. All right. So you don't.
Okay, so everybody in the room don't know what the minutes are from the meeting before.
Well, the
They have
board
no
members
idea.
do, though, right? The board members do, right? Because they've got a copy, right?
Yes, because if they read the minutes, then they know.
Right. So at the time that the president makes that motion, if you or any other board member has a problem with that, with those minutes, you should step up and, first of all, there'd be a motion and presumably a second, and then there's a discussion. So typically, let's say you had a problem with those minutes. There would be a motion. If I were you, I'd make the second for discussion, and then you would point out in the minutes that, subject to the fact that this isn't included and this isn't included.
Exactly.
That's what you would do. And then the board would have to vote.
Right. So the treasurer stands and says, we're not going to read the minutes. And I say, well, no, I want the minutes read for the people. I've done this months. I want them read because there are people here that weren't here last month. Well, if they don't come, then it's too bad. They won't know what and it's passed. There's a board of 15. There are maybe 4 of us with like minds, and the rest of them just vote the way they're told to vote.
Well,
so we never get the minutes right. Oh, you know what my question is, really? I have an obligation. It's my fiduciary position that I do the right thing. I refuse, because I took the minutes and I transcribed them, to eliminate that portion because, it was only a joke. Now, it wasn't a joke because it was voted on, a roll call vote, and it was passed. My question is, do I have an obligation to myself and my community to stand for what I believe would be wrong?
Well, what you have to do, yes, you do, but you have to do it. You know, you kind of have to do it within the guidelines or rules that you've been given. So first of all, there is no requirement to read the minutes, the previous minutes. The board can waive the requirement to read the previous minutes. Um, that that can be done in a separate vote from the approval of the previous minutes. Um, so, you know, the board may decide to waive the previous minutes, and the president is right from the standpoint of the board doesn't have any obligation to go back and reread what happened at the previous meeting for the people who are in the audience who happen to miss it. Board members have the minutes. The members have an opportunity to have a copy of the minutes, so they have an opportunity to read that. Now, so that's the first issue. The second issue, though, is more of a valid one, and this is where, you know, if you've got a problem with those minutes, and again, keeping in mind that the minutes don't have to document everything that was said or anything else, they do have to document all motions. So if there was a legitimate motion, a second, and a vote, like you're talking about, that has to be documented in the minutes. That's a requirement. That has to be in the minutes. That's one of the very few things that has to be in the minutes. So if that was left out, then you, as the secretary or as a board member, have an obligation to object to the approval of the minutes because they're not complete. So you would vote against the approval of the minutes, and presumably, once you've indicated what's happened, the board would also take that into consideration. Now, if there's 4 of you that vote that the minutes are incorrect, and the rest say, no, we're okay with it. Yeah, it was a joke or whatever. Well, then they're on record as having approved it. You're on record as having, having an objection. You voiced your objection so that you identified the motion and the item that you feel should be in there. And so then you've done your fiduciary responsibility. You can't control what happens. The board does that. But you, as an officer of the board, as a secretary, you have done your job in terms of at least making the board aware that you don't believe the minutes are complete. Okay, and that's what you should do. I mean, if you have a problem with that, you should do that. No one.
Go ahead.
I was going to say no one person controls what happens, and that includes the president. And if the president leaves something out of the minutes because it was his or her opinion that was not a legitimate motion, then at least the board has to go ahead and agree with that. One person can't arbitrarily leave that out if there was a motion made and a second and a roll call vote. That I would, if I was on the board, I would have a problem with that. I would think that was.
I do have a problem with that, and how it turned to me. I'm not the secretary. The secretary isn't there anymore, and I had a tape recorder, and that's why I took the minutes, and that's why I transcribed them. This is not what I normally do, but I was accurate, and I was accurate. It was a motion. It was passed. It was a roll call vote. Besides, everybody said, except for 2 people, yes. And then he wants that eliminated because he doesn't want that. No, it was a question of salaries, which his salary was in question.
The president?
So, yeah. In other words,
the president gets paid?
The president, let's see, how did it go? No, he's also the president, but he's the office manager.
Yeah, well,
so it's a conflict of interest as far as I'm concerned.
He has to have a license. If he doesn't, first of all,
he has a CAM license. He has a CAM license.
Yeah, well,
yes. The thing is, wait a minute. The thing is that the board decided that since we needed a secretary in the office, it would come out of the treasurer and the president's salaries, because they get paid very well. for 12 hours of work a week. And everybody voted yes, it should come out of, because he manages the office. You know, I mean, since when do you have to have different people get paid by the association? It's one office. They should have a secretary and a treasurer, and it's one pay. But the board decided that it would come out of their salary, the office salary. So everybody voted a roll call vote, except for him and the treasurer, who of course don't want money coming out of their salaries. And that's what he wants eliminated. He just wants that taken out.
Well, if
so
if that was voted on, it can't come out of there. And I think it's I think it's a little bit of an issue with the fact that you've got the president also as the property manager, and that typically is a problem. That's an internal control
problem. It's a big problem.
But
it's a big problem. And we just had a vote on people who wanted to be on the board. There were 3 women. I called a couple of weeks ago. 3 women that wanted to count. See who the people who wanted to be on the board. When they got to the office, he had already opened the box and told them, "Oh no, there were only 15. So we don't have to have a vote." Now, this is going on for about 10 years. For one reason or another, they never have a vote, and it's the same people over and over, and including him and the treasurer. They're always the same two. They're working the office, and they're on the board.
It's a condominium association?
Yes. It's a conflict of interest. I mean, I live in New York in a condominium association also. And it's just run different. The office is the office. They have nothing to do at all with the homeowners. They run the office. It's an outside contractor.
Yeah, that's normally the way it is here. I mean, that's typically the way it is.
No, this is not typical in ours.
No, yours is not typical. In fact, I would potentially file a complaint if the situation wasn't rectified, and because if there was a vote made and it was to reduce a salary, which first of all, board members aren't supposed to be paid.
No, he's not paid as a board member.
I know, but
I just want to clarify that.
I know, but still,
but he is the president and the office manager.
Yeah, well, he's the president. He can't get paid as the president either.
No.
So he's being paid as the property manager, which is as the CAM. That's a significant problem because of the issues that you're talking about, elections and everything else, and it's just.
Okay, so who do I file a complaint with?
Well, you know what? I think this is one of those things where I'd like to get Peter's opinion on this thing when he's on the line. He wasn't in today, and so on today. But I'd like to run this by him again. I think he's going to be back. I think we'll be here next week, and he'll be back next week. We'll talk about it at that time. But I would like to run it by him to see what his issue, because this area, when you get a board member / officer who's also compensated as a property manager in a self-managed association, has some wrinkles to it that I'm not sure of all of the legalities, and I would have to. I'd rather get Peter, because he's the attorney, to chime in on that and give you his position. I mean, the minutes itself, the information I've given you relative to the minutes, that's the way, that's the fact. And minutes, we've talked about it on the show a number of times. Minutes do have to document who was present. They document any motions made, seconds, votes. Votes don't have to be unanimous, but document the votes. You don't necessarily have to document who voted for what, but you do have to vote. You do have to note the result of the vote, and what the position was. Some votes do require that you do a roll call and document the vote, because
Well, we did a roll
yeah,
call.
you did
'cause
it. So,
we
which may or may not have been required there, but a motion and a second, that wasn't withdrawn and that was voted on, um, that's got to be documented in the minutes, and it's got to be followed. Now, if the board thought when you presented that, when you presented, the board thought that wasn't intended, or whatever, and they want to take action to change that at that board meeting, well, first of all, they probably can't do that because they didn't document that. Okay, but
Right.
they could have. So what they have to do is document or post a notice in the next meeting, what's going to happen. Um, there is an issue there because, um, frankly, there is some.
It's a conflict of interest.
Well, the members have access to payroll records. Um, they don't have access to the payroll records of a property management company, so they can't have access there. But they do have access to the association's records relative to what they pay personnel. They don't have access to the personnel files relative to issues,
Absolutely, we
those kind of
understand
things.
that.
Right. So, so that it's one of those kind of things where, there would be, potentially, um, there is some privacy issues that you could get into in terms of protection of a person's, documentation of a person's, uh, for example, if the discussion that on limiting the salary had to do with, the person, maybe not working the number of hours or carrying out their duties effectively, or being worth that kind of money because their performance hasn't been that good or whatever, some general comment like that may not be appropriate in the minutes because that's a performance issue that might not be appropriate in the minutes, might
Right.
not have been appropriate in there. So, I could understand maybe striking that, but you can't strike the motion. So
What from what I understand, I'm reading the statutes and trying to follow them during the course of the year. The train left the track. I just forgot what I was going to say.
Yeah, that's what happens when I read those documents too. When I read the statutes too, the train just leaves the track. I always forget those things. I was never good at Bible school either, so go ahead. But I can't remember those sections. But Peter does. He remembers all of those. He must have been good at that stuff. But no, I know it's and it is
very frustrating.
It is an issue. I think that I think that someone should have challenged that and at least gone on record, because at that point, if you challenge it in your second, they have to document that, and then they have to vote on it, which then they would have to vote against your adjustment, against your. So that's why I was saying, if there was a motion to approve the minutes, if you seconded subject to for discussion, subject to adjustment, of the minutes to add the resolution relative to the redistribution of the president's salary in the budget or something like that, which, by the way, that may, depending upon the situation there, that may require a larger notice than what you did and all those kind of things. So because it technically might have been a modification of the budget. So, there again, there was a lot of stuff that happened there that probably, may or may not be appropriate. So, I think that your point is valid. And I think for any board member or anybody out there that's there, if there is a requirement to document attendance, there's a requirement to document motions and motions that were approved and motions that were denied, that were weren't approved, and then you don't have to document all the discussion. You don't have to discuss. There could have been a ton of discussion about whether this,
Yeah, there was.
that doesn't
but
have
it
to
was,
be in there. That doesn't have to be
no,
in
it
there at
was
all.
just limited. It was just the motion, the roll
The second
call,
and the roll call. That's
and
what had to be in there.
yeah. Now, for this is what I was going to say. Do the minutes have to be kept forever? And we were never allowed to tape the minutes. And then at a necessity in October, because there was no longer a secretary, I happened to have my phone. I recorded it, and then I had to transcribe it. But I'm thinking that I read that the minutes should be held for a longer period of time than 7 years, that we are allowed to tape the minutes, and those also have to be saved. Am I correct?
No, not on the taping portion of it. First of all, if for convenience purposes, you tape the meeting so that you can make sure later that you can, that you've transcribed the meeting correctly, or have gotten all of the motions and who approved them and everything.
And that's the one meeting that we were, we taped.
Yeah.
And it was like an hour and a half.
Technically, what's supposed to happen is after the minutes are approved, that recording would get destroyed. It's not kept. It doesn't become
Okay.
It doesn't become part of the records. It wouldn't be held. I frankly don't like electronic records of minutes because, first of all, they can become part of the records. People end up saving those things, and then you get a lot of information in the company's books and records that gets maintained, and then and it doesn't need to be. The minutes should be complete. Once the minutes are done and approved, any drafts, any previous edition would be eliminated.
Okay.
So now that's once it's been approved. So that's why I say if any member has a problem with those minutes, they're supposed to do that at the meeting, and note any kind of change or problem they've got. And if somebody's got a problem with that notation, then it's opened up for discussion. And
right.
So that's what that's what was done electronically. Some people don't allow electronic recording of the minutes. And I understand that there's some reasons for that. One is that there sometimes are things said in the minutes that don't have anything to do with motions and everything, but or general discussion that can get the association into trouble, and the more that information is passed around, the more trouble it could get them in. So, a lot of times having something like that isn't always a good thing. You also have, you have people that then are, trying to record and trying to get all the information, and, so it's allowed. You can have recording devices, but I'm not a big fan of it for purposes of the minutes, just because if it's, if somebody's just trying to get the information down and then, as a backup, yeah, I can understand that. But then once the minutes are done, you should get rid of that electronic copy because it's just a draft. It doesn't become official records because it was used only to prepare the official record, which is the minutes. Relative to the time frame, I generally like to keep minutes, going back really for an extended, I like to keep them as a permanent part of the records. It seems crazy if you're, association that's been around for 50 years, 40 years or something, but at least the annual meeting minutes and some of the things nowadays with electronic files and all of that, you're not talking about cabinets after cabinets. Realistically, you probably don't have to keep something beyond, the statute of limitations. I don't remember what the record keeping is for minutes now. But it's
apparently it must be 7 years because
that's normally a statute of limitations. And
every year they throw
but again, like I say, if you've got good minutes and they're concise, it's a good history for the association to go back and look and see, what did we do in the past? Did we do this kind of thing? What did we do? Who did we pay to do it? There are some things that um, that are in those minutes that document approval of contracts and things like that, and licensing and issues. Like, say you're having a roof done. Okay, I mean, that meeting where that was approved, and any kind of conditions of the contract were approved, or the copy of the contract itself is there. I'd have that as long as I had that roof, because if there's a warranty issue or a construction defect issue, I want to go back and look at that and see, make sure I don't make the same mistake next time, and also look at that and see what may have happened, and why. So it's but yeah, I think it's, most of the things in the statute or in the rules are 7 years, is because it's a statute of limitations issue. Once you go beyond, even now, I believe that it used to be that construction defects could be, and I think there might have been a change to the law on this, but construction defects, you could go back. You had a certain period of time from the time that the defect was identified. So, for example, if there was a bad concrete, non, it was a bad thing of concrete or whatever that was utilized in some balcony construction or something, and you didn't identify that until it became a problem. You had a longer period of time because it wasn't easily or readily identifiable. And that's how some of the associations were able to actually sue under the hurricanes. They were actually able to go back to, there was some period there that they could go back and sue. That was a little bit longer because of the fact that the defect didn't show up at the time.
I remember that about the concrete patio.
Yeah.
But therein lies another area. There is no one on the contract committee, the president, office manager, one and the same, just hires whoever. We don't get, nothing gets approved. He just does what he does.
And that's why I say, when you get to that point, there are certain things that are statutory. And when Peter's back, he can go over some of those. But you are required to get bids on certain things. Those bids
never get bids. Never. He claims that nobody ever calls him back. Yet when a few of us call different companies, they called us right back and sent us paperwork.
Yeah. So, that's the kind of thing that, and I'll tell you this. I know that probably the president believes he's doing or she's doing the right thing. They're trying to do the best for the association, and they can handle it the best, so they're going to handle it. This is going to bite this person one way or another. And I will tell you, over a period of time in my career, I have seen these situations occur where one person basically has taken control of the association. And ultimately, it doesn't end well for the person that does that. Even though they meant well, it does not end well. And when you're, in your 60s or 70s or 80s, and you get thrown out of your association, it's probably not a very pleasant thing. And, and eventually that's kind of what happens, is that the person is going to be in a situation where they're going to be forced to move, or something's going to happen that they didn't anticipate. And because they took responsibility, they're going to get the punishment that comes with that responsibility. And because they didn't have other board members involved to question them, to shield them, to help protect them and help them make the right decision, they will get the blame. And when that happens, some of that blame can involve financial restitution and criminal charges. So I encourage any president or officer of an association, first of all, make sure that you've got a full board and that the board is adequately involved. And second of all, make sure that you don't stay in the position for an extended period of time. And for an extended period of time, I'm talking more than 2 or 3 years. You guys should.
This guy's been on for 10 years. The board's been there.
Yeah.
The board, the same board.
I know, and I understand that. And everybody has a vested interest in that, they think. But but what I'm saying is, and the person might be doing a good job. That doesn't mean you need to kick them off the board, although there are term limits now. Um, it doesn't mean you need to necessarily kick them off. But when one person is in charge the whole time, things happen, and even the fact that people don't question their own decisions because they believe they thought it through at the time. So you don't have that second control that exists where somebody else is looking at the decision and saying, why did we do that? Okay, I understand now. So what happens is the person never has to think through their decision twice. So they never have to really produce an argument as to why they don't have to put it on paper or put it down in their own mind why they're doing it. They're just, they don't make.
It just becomes rote.
Yeah, it becomes rote, becomes a rash decision sometimes, without adequate thought of the consequences. And that's why I say, over a period of time, that ends up biting that person. And I know many of those people to be very good people. They had good hearts. They thought they were doing the right thing. But I'm telling you, when it happens, it is a horrible process. And 9 times out of 10, that person has to move from their association. They just can't live there any longer.
Well, he already moved.
Well,
he's still president and manager.
Well, then that's a different story. But yeah, I guess see, I was right.
Yeah, because he owns a condo there, he's president, so he's got to hold on to one.
Yeah.
But as far as term limits now, there's a difference. Is it so many years, single years? Is it so many years, double years? What is the
I think
term limit now?
Recently, I think they clarified that, and I'm trying to remember. I think it is. Well, there was 2 questions. One, if you were in the middle of a term, I think you had. I think it was 8 years that you had the term limit. Again, I'm going by memory here, and my memory's not that good all the time. But and then the question was, was it it was a certain number of terms, so if you had a 2-year term, was it 4 2-year terms or whatever it was? And when did it start? Did it start retroactive? And they've gone back and forth on this. So we really don't, I think, fully have clarification. The division issued rules that originally said that it started at the date that the law was passed. So that in effect, they were at 0 and they could start over again.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then the division came out and said, no, we're going to include any of the time that they've already served as part of that. And then my understanding is the most recent one, again, I don't know that this is final, but the most recent one was the division now was saying again that it was going to start over again. So they had a new series of, and that was it. Once that was expired, they had to get off the board. And
right.
It was, and they clarified it to make it years, not terms. So, so if you had a 2-year term, you could serve, whether I think it was 4 years or 4
years, because it's 8 years, even for single year term.
Yeah.
Single.
Yeah. So they've got, like I said, they made it a set period of time. It starts whether it's 1 or 2 year terms. It's a number of years, and as I think it stands right now, it's going prospective, so it doesn't go retroactive. So it starts at the time of the law that that was passed, and that's when the first term or the first year starts. Right. So and that is not. Go ahead.
Aren't we so lucky that we only get the same people that want to be on the board? Nobody ever wants to be on the board. Well, let's see. Maybe because it's not announced, and maybe because nobody gets a letter. Maybe because people are in the dark who live up north, because after all, they subsidize us, the Northerners.
Yeah.
No. We're trying to explain to them that, no, we subsidize you because we don't use the electric and the water and all of this stuff, but we're paying the same amount of dues and we're gone 6 months of the year.
Yeah. Well,
So
they're supposed to, there is a requirement that they send out 60 days in advance of the
no,
election.
they don't do any of that. Our election was in October.
Okay.
Some people got notices. I, as a board member, didn't even get one. So
Well,
I had to call the office and ask them to send me one.
And see, this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about, is that whether that's, it's the property, it's basically the association's responsibility through the property manager to issue the proper notices. That's why you hire a professional property manager, so those notices
That's
go out
right.
timely. Okay. Now, if those notices do not go out on a timely basis, all right, that is a violation, and it's a method, or a thing that you can file a complaint with the division, because they will step in on election issues. So if that letter never goes out, then you have a right to file a complaint. The division will come down and assuming there's not an election coming up in a month or something, they will throw out that they will invalidate that election and require you to do it again.
Right.
So you have to send that 60 days out. People have to have an option of running, and then at that point in time, if there isn't more candidates than positions, then there is no need to send out fact sheets on the people, and there's no need to go through
Exactly.
it and have an election.
That's never happened, because they never have more people to run. As a matter of fact, 4 years ago, the rumor that was going around, that started in the office, that it would cost $5,000 if we had an election. Me being new down there, I didn't know that was the fact. But that was that they just passed that one around. Oh, people were going, oh no, it's going to cost $5,000, and a couple of hundred at the most. It's a ream of paper and 2 rolls of stamps.
Yeah, you've got some mailing requirements, but that's it. And so it isn't that it is expensive if you have to do it more than one time because you messed it up. But because it's expensive time wise, and it's expensive, and it delays the process.
Yeah, but it wasn't $5,000.
No,
it's
not
$5,000. You keep on saying the division. Who exactly do I write to?
You've got you've got the.
Is it Tallahassee?
Yeah, it's in Tallahassee. It's the division of condominiums,
Okay.
mobile homes, and timeshares, and they have and there's a complaint process where you can file a complaint with the division, and they will assign a financial person to look at that. They don't, they deal with things like elections, financial issues, salary issue, things like not how much somebody should be paid, but the issues. If there's been a violation of the law in those areas, they will look at those, and and they also the division falls under the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, which also regulates CAMs, Community Association Managers. So they do have a person in the division. They have a liaison that works with the CAM people to also regulate property managers to make sure that we do the right thing. So you've got a couple different things you can do there, but the election issue and the and possibly the minutes, the election issue, and also the the notices, and the issue with potentially with payment for the property manager. That all of that needs to is stuff that potentially the division will look at.
I mean, we know what he gets paid because we get a financial report every month. We know what he's getting paid, but he's not working 40 hours. They're only there 4 days a week from 9 to 12.
Yeah.
I understand. He keeps on saying, "Oh, well, I get called in for emergencies." Well, hello. If you were in the office from 9 to 4, it wouldn't be after you're out of the office.
and you have to come back.
Well,
So, and he's getting a very yes. Anybody would like that salary for those hours.
yeah, and and I understand. In defense, like I said, on some of that stuff, I understand that. The property managers end up going to a lot of board meetings that are at night. They end up going in a lot of outside hours.
They won't even have a nighttime board meeting. We have a lot of people in our condo, and even though they're in their 70s, work.
Yeah.
Because it's getting expensive and they like to do things. So for the last 2 years, I have made a motion to have evening meeting, at least one. In 4 years, we had one evening meeting. The treasurer refused to go to the meeting because it's at night. The president said, well, we'll just have this one. People work. When we have a nighttime meeting, that one meeting, we have like 60 people there.
Right. Yeah.
Otherwise, in the morning, 10:30, people are going to work. They got doctor appointments, whatever.
Yeah.
And, if we're lucky if we get a dozen people.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially, if it's out of season, when it's, all that kind of thing. But,
no, it's in season.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying.
I'm talking December to April, May. That's in season.
Yeah.
A lot of those people work.
No, you're right.
They can't, listen, I've taken enough of your time.
No, I appreciate it. I wish Peter was here to address some of the legal issues. He's great at that stuff. And I'm going to bring this up. And if I'll make sure Mike reminds me, but next week when Peter's in, assuming he's going to be here, I'm not sure what his holiday schedule is.
Could I have his phone number? He's an attorney, right?
Yeah, and
no, you can't give it to me.
No, I can't. His firm is K. Rembaum, and I'm trying to remember. I don't have his office number handy. Let Michael get it. Michael get it for us. I think in
K. Bender Rembaum.
Yeah, K. Bender. Yeah. What's the?
You want me to just read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, it is 954-928-0680.
Okay, and that's
954-928-0680. And where is this radio station located? Is it north? Is it south? Is it?
We're
central?
in Stewart. We're in Stewart.
Oh, okay. So it's not far from us.
No, and
so he's not far from us.
Well, he's got an office down. He's got an office in Fort Lauderdale. He's got an office in West Palm Beach. He's got an office in Tequesta. And he actually works out of the Tequesta office, so he's not far away. But if you call that number and ask for Peter Mullengarden, they'll put you through, and he can meet with you and help you out too.
Okay, that sounds really great. I'm sorry I took up so much of your time.
No, I'm glad you called, Connie. That's why we're here, just to.
Okay, you'll be hearing from me again.
Okay, I appreciate the call.
Okay, bye now.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Well, and I, like I say, we'll make sure that some of these issues we'll get Peter to chime in because of the legal aspect of it. I only play an attorney on the radio, so I don't actually have a license, so I can't really step onto that stuff. Most of the it's interesting for those of you that are maybe haven't been regular listeners. The great thing about this show for me has been that I get to sit here normally and hear Peter talk about some of the aspects of the law. And over 17 years, most everything I know is as a result of stuff that I've picked up from Peter over the years, whether it's cases, rules, regulations, or laws. So it's great to have that kind of resource. And I apologize that we didn't have him here today, but I did want to mention, because I know it does affect Peter. Happy Hanukkah. I know we have some people that, are celebrating the holiday. And so this time of the year, it's always busy with the holidays. And of course, I think Hanukkah started last night or something. So we wish everybody a happy Hanukkah. And those of you that celebrate a Merry Christmas, because that's coming up. And we will, we will have the show after the holidays on the Monday before New Year's, and we will be back here, and of course we'll address that issue that Connie had, and we do appreciate the calls and we appreciate the discussion. We try to be both Peter and I work a lot with associations and with their boards. Like I say, I'm a property manager as well, so we understand the ins and outs, and sometimes in the whole scheme of things, our experience has been that most of the time the people are trying to do good. It's just their definition and which side of the equation they're on. But anyway, we're here to help you, and we'll be back again next Monday on Condo Solutions from 9 to 10 o'clock. So tell your friends, bring your questions, because it's always a lot better. And Connie, we really appreciate your question today. It's a good opportunity to discuss some of those issues, because I know other associations have things similar to that. So anyway, if you're out there and you've got a problem like that, bring it to us and we'll try to get you some resolution. Like I say, we'll be back next Monday right here on WSTU Digital 1450. We are Martin County's Heritage Station.